Awesome. Suzie Rhodes. I'm so glad that you're here. I was telling you off camera. So I watched your episode with Kyle Wolf on the We Built an Empire podcast. And the idea with the chasing greatness side of things is basically conversations with conversations with people that inspire me. And if anybody has a story that is inspirational and filled with, a tremendous amount of ups and downs and curveballs and everything, yours is definitely near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. And I'm just so excited at the opportunity to be able to pick your brain and learn from you and hear a little bit about your story and your mindset behind it all and things like that. One of the things that I think is interesting, and I am going to ask you to tell this story because there's probably a lot of people listening that are wondering what I'm talking about. But right before we started recording, I thought it was interesting because you were kind of talking to me about after your accident, there was sort of I'll call it a media frenzy. Like a lot of people wanted to, chat with you and you were dealing with so much at the time. And it almost feels like now there's been time for the dust to settle and almost it's like you've got your thoughts in order now, maybe because there's been enough time to like process it all. So I want to definitely touch on that. But before we do you mind humoring me and, kind of telling me the story from the day that your accident happened?
Yeah. So in 2020, me and my ex were actually off-roading on Black Bear Pass. Freak accident kind of happened. The Jeep ended up rolling down the side of the mountain. And people who have seen it, they know, or like if you've seen the YouTube video, you kind of know why it was so crazy. There was a Jeep in front of us whose GoPro caught the whole thing on camera. And so in a matter of seconds, you just see a Jeep falling down the side of the mountain.
And it's pretty scary footage. Like and I think I'm seeing the one that you're referencing, but there was one coming down that had a GoPro mounted and the red Jeep
went like right across it.
Like almost hit it right in front of it.
Yeah.
Was there another angle or that's the
only one? And the guy who was like, whose GoPro that was, he was super nice. He was actually the first one on scene. So right, that road that he's on, that the red Jeep like kind of bounces off of, that's where I was found.
Wow.
So I'm in all the debris coming down and he did me a solid. He cut me out of the frame, which I was really appreciative.
Oh, wow. So you're actually sorry, to take a step back. You guys were four-wheeling on Black Bear Pass. What triggered the accident? Because wasn't the Jeep parked?
I can't talk about that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. But series of events occurred and the Jeep ultimately ended up rolling down the mountain. And then that's where this video that we're referencing
kind of comes
into
in
play. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had rolled quite a ways before you were ejected?
So 300 vertical feet. And I like to tell people, my brother asked me when I was in the hospital, he was like, how many times do you think you rolled inside? And I counted 20.
Wow.
So it was like 300 feet, but what I remember was like 20 times just kind of inside the cab of the Jeep. So I remember everything start to finish, which always kind of catches people off guard too when they hear. But yeah, that's kind of where the story started. And so when the video went up on YouTube, that's when like the media started coming into play. People heard about the accident and wanted to know, and then the YouTube came up, and then everyone kind of put my name out there. So that's how everyone kind of figured out who I was.
Yeah, now you're a celebrity for all the, well, maybe right or wrong reason we'll find out. But so I'm curious, and I think that's fascinating, especially the remembering, the entirety of the event. At what point did you realize the Jeep was rolling, and what was the thought process? Like, walk me through the emotions from, because I would imagine there was a little while there when there wasn't, you weren't hurt yet there, but it was happening and you couldn't do anything about it. What was that like?
The only thought that really crossed my mind through start to finish was, how the hell am I getting out of this Jeep? From like the initial like kind of slide to where it rolled. I tried jumping out the side of the car, couldn't get out fast enough. And that's kind of when the rolling started. And then rolling, I was like, how do I get out? How do I get out? I was like, eventually it's going to stop. And I got ejected a few seconds after that.
Wow.
So,
And then walk me through then, obviously it's got to have been chaotic and all sorts of things going on, but you at some point realized that you're pretty significantly hurt. What was the, kind of the next?
so right after I got ejected and people were on scene, EMS was called. I had a weird tingling sensation in my leg, so I actually thought my knees were at my chest. And it was kind of just a weird feeling. I was like, I'm not walking. I'm not walking right now, at least. And I kind of figured I was paralyzed. Just kind of an odd feeling. And so,
But you had a sense of that? Like, you had a sense that
yeah,
you were paralyzed the moment, like immediately
yeah,
after it had happened.
yeah. There was. It's weird. There was just like a sensation in my legs that I'd never felt. Something was definitely off. I was like, chances are I'm paralyzed. So I kind of figured I was, and then sure enough, like, yeah, spinal cord got hurt. But luckily that's it. I mean, I'll take just the spinal cord injury over what could have happened any day of the week.
And that's why I'm so excited to, be able to pick your brain and hopefully share your mindset with people. Because even that statement right there that you just mentioned, like, thank goodness that was all that it was. And there's these, I feel like clearly a very pivotal moment in your life that's going to change the trajectory one way or another. And I'm excited to learn more about, the ways in which it has changed it. But I also think it's so cool to hear how even that little statement you said right there has a bit of a positive spin to it. And I picked up on that so much when I was listening, to you and on the guest with Kyle's podcast. And I just think that resilient kind of mindset is so powerful, especially in the face of such extreme adversity, because it's just as easy to say, this is the worst thing ever and everything's awful, and to go down that other path. I'm curious, and a little bit of context with it. I've had a fair amount of conversations on this podcast before, and with people who have overcome adversity, and kind of this idea of nature versus nurture, right? Like, are we born with this positive outlook on life, or do we develop it over time? And I'm curious, from your perspective, do you feel like you had other adversities in life that sort of prepared you to, be able to have that outlook that you have? Or do you think that it's just, you just had that outlook and carried it on?
I think as you go through life, you make the decision. So you go through life, it's not always fair. It can be really shitty, or you can go through life and have every positive thing happen. Whatever the case is, you have to make the mental note of like, all right, do I stay stuck in this moment in what could be, what could have been, or do you kind of just like move on in life? And so for me, when bad things happen, you just kind of like move through life. And sometimes it takes a lot harder. So like, yes, I try and be really positive. It's not always like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
So a good like year and a half after I got home, I hit a really bad depression state, hated my life, didn't want to live anymore. And, you have to fight like one day at a time and find something to hold on to. And then you'll get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm good. We're going to move forward. We're not going to let what happened determine what we do next. And I very much think you have to train yourself to be resilient. And you have to train yourself to try and find the good in something.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to be intentional about what you focus on, or how, how I don't know, that if you choose to focus on certain things, that'll be what's magnified versus if you choose to focus on those others. I'm curious. So, you kind of mentioned a year and a half afterwards as being a little bit of a turning point. Can you talk me through that first, though, year and a half? I would love to hear a little bit more of the accident occurred. You realize essentially immediately that you're paralyzed. I'd love to hear from you. When did it sink in, though, that this is going to impact your life forever? And what was the evolution until that turning point? What were the next steps, even physically and mentally, afterwards?
So I went to Craig Hospital for my rehabilitation for 3 months. And it's a great spinal cord and neuro rehabilitation center. And it was there, a lot of ups and downs. Just, this is my reality. But while I was there, I also realized how lucky I was, that things weren't worse. And so that was kind of a roller coaster. Like, some days I was super positive. Some days I was super negative. And about halfway through, it kind of sunk in that, okay, I'm living in a wheelchair. And then when I got home, reality of what living in a wheelchair was really hit. Because when you're in a rehabilitation center, it's catered to you. Everything was accessible. I didn't know what lack of accessibility even meant. And so when I came home, that changed. And then I had to learn, essentially, like the hard way of, all right, I have to adjust my life and everything that I do to live in an able-bodied world, essentially. So
What are some of the, because I think it's so interesting to think about that, like you never realize, it's like, have you ever heard the red car analogy? It's like, how many red cars did you, see on your way here? Of course, no idea. Well, if you were driving a red car, if I paid you to, count the red cars, you'd be able to count them. But I think so many of us have no idea. I mean, in fact, it's even like when we were scheduling this conversation and you were like, is it wheelchair accessible? And I'm like, oh, I never even thought of that. And I think that it's an interesting way to think about things because it applies on a bigger picture, obviously accessibility, but, accommodations for all sorts of people and things and, realities. So I'm curious, and I just think it's important for everybody to be a little more aware of things like that. Like you don't realize how easy it is for me to walk up and down the stairs. Much like I'm sure there's other things in my life that I'm just clueless to that are huge huge impact on others. I'm curious, what were some of the eye-opening, like, oh my gosh, this is not designed for somebody in a wheelchair? What were like the simplest, silliest things that were, that you came across right when you got back?
Not everywhere has an accessible bathroom. So you have to be pretty diligent about when you go to the bathroom, how much liquids you drink, because there's places that have a bathroom, but I couldn't get into. There's a handful of restaurants down on Main Street that I won't even go into or eat at because they don't have an accessible bathroom. And so that's one of the biggest ones. Doorways. I think a standard like wheelchair accessible doorway is like 3 feet. So I've definitely been in places where I just can't get in because of the door. Stairs, that's always a good one.
Yeah.
Stairs are fun. And then parking. Just either the lack of accessible parking spots or that one is listed, but there's not the dashed lines next to it.
So there's not the room to
Get my wheelchair out of my car.
Is that why you backed in here purposely for a room?
Yeah.
Interesting. See, and I think those are those little things that I think so many of us would overlook. You know, like now you have to back into the spot so that there's room on the other side. What about driving? Even just the act of driving, was that a learning curve again?
Not really. So I learned at Craig how to drive with hand controls. The first time was really weird because training your hand to like push and stop, and that was kind of weird. But then I got the hang of it, and now it's just pretty second nature. Everyone gets in my car and wants to try out the hand controls. And I'm like, I will teach you how to, but not when it's crazy. Probably in a dead parking lot, so we don't hit anything.
Somewhere safe and controlled a little bit. I would imagine too, and because I definitely want to get back to, you know, your mindset with it all, but I also think there's so many little things that occurred, you know, that you have to deal with that people overlook. Like I would imagine too that there's been new expenses, like outfitting the car to drive and these other things like that. Is that
Oh yeah. Living in a wheelchair is not cheap. My wheelchair was priced pretty expensively. I know like a new set of wheels that I want are between like $900 to $1,500 just for new wheels that are a little bit lighter.
Literally wheels, or is the word wheels like
No,
slang for a wheelchair?
No, like just the wheels, just like the big
Literally
wheels.
the wheels.
Just the wheels.
$1,500?
And they're lighter. They're significantly lighter than the wheels I have. If I had the money, I would totally buy some. My hand controls were pretty pricey. You can get some hand controls off Amazon. I got electric hand controls just so anyone can kind of use my car. So if I'm with my family and I don't want to drive, then they can drive and they don't have to worry about the hand controls too much. So I definitely got a higher end of that, and that can be modified too. But you have to go get trained in hand controls. And I have some friends that literally don't drive because nowhere trains how to use hand controls. There's not vehicles that DMVs have for people who need to use them. So you're kind of just stuck until you get the hours you need with hand controls to get your license to use hand controls.
Yeah, see, all these little things that I think, you know, out of sight, out of mind for so much of the population, which I just think I think it's important that we learn that and pay attention to that because it matters. I mean, even the fact that it's hard for somebody to get a driver's license that thought never crossed my mind. And
it never crossed my mind until I met some people in California who ran into that problem. And I was like, wow, if I hadn't gone to Craig where they offer it, then I would be in the same position. I'd have to have someone always drive me around, and that would take away my independence a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I drove here, I work, where I need to go, I can go because I have that capability, but some people don't.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's wild to consider. And I'm curious because you'd kind of talked about that 18-month after the accident, you know, sort of being the low point. Was the progression from that? I mean, is a lot of it just, what's the primary emotion, you know, for those? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling depressed? Were you feeling, I mean, a combination of them all? Was it more of an adapting moment even? What was kind of
It was a lot of anger.
Anger.
Yeah. So it was like a form of depression, but I was really, really mad. I just hated my new reality. I hated living in a wheelchair. I hated how hard everything was. And at the time, it was really hard. I mean, it probably took me 5 minutes to get in and out of my car. It probably took me like 15 minutes to get in and out of my car, to where now it takes me a couple minutes. I was just mad. I was mad that I was the one that got hurt. I was mad that my accident made national television. I was mad that everyone thought they had their own opinion about what happened that day. I was just mad.
Yeah. So even which of course you were. I mean, I can't, I mean, what a normal emotion, to feel. And then I can imagine that, these little inconveniences that we touched on too would obviously contribute to the anger, because you've got this larger reality that you're dealing with. And then these every moment reminders, of it as well, like literally no escaping, where we're at. And it's interesting too. So I had Aaron Shank on the podcast a while back, and he had a good friend pass away, and he was sharing with me that his primary emotion early on was anger as well, and then loneliness. But I think that when these huge traumas happen in our lives, you have no way of anticipating what the emotion is going to be. Of course, there's no way to train or plan for that. I mean, you don't even, know that the trauma's on its way. What I'd love to hear about is, and it may relate to kind of what we were talking about earlier on, choosing what we focus on or whatever it might be. But then there was a turning point that happened, because you don't seem angry to me now.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not angry.
How did you pull yourself from these lows? I mean, even suicidal lows, it sounds like. And, this tremendous amount of negative emotions and anger and things like that, to the person that's sitting in front of me now.
So, I'm pretty rooted in my faith. So I did a lot of talking to God, but also screaming at God. And that was just centered kind of like, all right, you saved me. You had to save me for a purpose. Something's going to come out of all this. Something has to come out of all this. Like, I'm not going through this pain. I'm not living this just to live like this. So I wanted more for my life. And then I got back into coaching volleyball. So I was a big volleyball player for most of my life. And then I started coaching when I was 19. And so I got back into coaching, and that was a big turnaround, because coaching was my safe haven. I love being in the gym, and it kind of gave me a part of normal life back. And then I started working at the rec center. And so really just getting into the routine of things, keeping my mind busy, and then talking to God, that kind of shifted that anger. And eventually all that just, I wasn't mad. Like, I still get sad sometimes. I'm like, man, it kind of sucks. But it kind of just shifted and gave me something else to think about and work for. And it's like, okay, I'm living a normal life. I'm having fun. I have great friends. And so just taking the little things in life and everything that I still had. I still had really good friends. I have a fantastic family. I got to coach volleyball. I was in my master's. I'm still in my master's, but like, I'm in school to help people so when they feel like me, then they have someone to talk to. And eventually it's kind of a day by day. When you are in that low place, you really have to take it day by day, and sometimes hour by hour, and just kind of give yourself some credit for how far you've gone. I mean, even looking back, I mean, my first week in a manual wheelchair was hard. I was so tired. I could barely spend like 3 hours in a chair, to where I spend 12 to 15 hours a day in a chair. So giving yourself credit for how far you've come definitely changed. And that's why I think when it comes to resiliency and the positive outlook, you train yourself to do that.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not born that way. You have to learn what you want in life, and you have to force it on yourself that you're not going to be what happened to you. That's the way I look at it.
Oh, and I love that you mentioned kind of like sticking it out for one more day.
Yeah.
Or even one more hour. Which to me, what I hear from that is hope. Like trusting that this will get better, or at least this will pass. And I think that's such a powerful perspective, because so many times, and especially when we're in pain, physical pain or emotional pain or whatever it might be, it's so the world gets dim on us. Like it's so all consuming that pain is, that sometimes it's hard to see the horizon, what next year might look like, or what 3 years from now might look like. But I love that frame of mind that you have, or even the way you've worded it, of one more hour, even like not, like I'm going to keep on pushing through for now. Did that come from internal? Was that,
That was kind of internal, but also that's kind of how my family lives. So my family and me, like, we've gone through a lot of trauma just in our family, and so we really learned that sometimes, yeah, it is an hour by hour, and for a lot of 2021, it was an hour by hour. But and then for my dad, one thing that he always tells me when I'm having a hard day is that it's fine, Suzie, the sun's gonna come up tomorrow. So that's kind of how I think. I'm like, well, it's a hard day, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow and we have a new day, and we can do what we want with that day. So
just don't quit.
Just don't quit.
Which I think is so, that's going to resonate with me for a long time, the hour by hour thing. Because, especially the topic of suicide and, people that are in lows. I mean, it's all around us. I've got so many people that I'm close with that, have struggles like that, and those thoughts and things like that. And I think that being able to reframe it, and I've never in my life have I ever shortened a time horizon to an hour. And so I'm fascinated with that, but I just think that that's such a powerful, because you can go one more hour.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it feels like a long ass hour, but it's an hour.
Yeah.
And then just refocus. And so I was talking to a volleyball player who was kind of struggling this year, and I was like, honestly, hard days happen, and even hard times happen. And it reminded me a lot of just coaching volleyball and even playing. Like, all right, you're going to take some hits. Like, you're going to get in some ruts. You're not going to win every game. But if you keep playing, then those losses turn into wins. Eventually, you're not game pounded by balls anymore, right? You're doing that to other people and other things. And so that's the way I look at it. I mean, an hour can feel really long, but it's also an hour, and then you reset after an hour. Take a deep breath, go take a walk, you come back, and you work hard for an hour. Yeah,
and it's almost like the goal is to keep playing.
Yeah.
Like we might not win today's game, but we're going to keep
better.
playing. Yeah. It's like we're practicing at life almost, or,
Yeah.
So you mentioned your faith. And I'm curious to pick your brain about that a little bit more, because it almost seems to me like when your mindset shifted 18 months after or so, it's almost like you decided that there had to be a why you were saved. I think that's even exactly what you said. Like, why did he save me? There had to have been a reason for him to save me. Did you ever think, though, why did I have this in the first place?
Oh, yeah. When I say I screamed at God, I mean, oh, man, I screamed. I would scream in my car almost every day. And it was just like, for a long time, I was like, it would have been easier. My life would have been easier if I would have just died on that mountain and called it a day. Because living in a wheelchair, it's hard. I'm happy it didn't happen, clearly. But so there was a lot of that. God, why did you save me? Like, what about me was worth saving? And so I was in counseling, and my therapist was like, are you going to be okay if you don't know that? And so that was my reality check, and I had to be okay with it. I don't know why I got saved that day, but I did. And so now it's my job to make the most of it.
Almost like you could underline the faith and trust that there is a why. We may not know the why,
Yeah.
but there is one. Do you think that then you get to almost choose the why, or that you have to I'd love to hear more of how you process that, or your thought process behind that, because I relate so much to feeling like there has to be a reason for it and believing that there is a reason for it, not necessarily knowing what the reason is yet. Is it a patience thing? Like, I'm going to wait for the reason, or I'm going to make the reason, or I'm going to lean into intuitions? Like what's the, because there's this smile about you now, and it feels to me like you have found some purpose and your own version of the why. And I'm kind of curious about if you feel like that has happened by choice, or by not maybe it's by just going an hour at a time, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think for a long time I was waiting for God to just kind of give me my purpose. And just having patience and trusting him, being like, all right, you're going to show me, you're going to show me, you're going to show me. And there was always something inside me that was like, there's something bigger I'm supposed to do. I don't know what it is, but like there's something bigger.
Before the accident, even like your whole life you've had that?
No.
Okay.
No, just after the accident. And so I always felt, I was like, man, something big is supposed to happen. Like, I'm supposed to do something big with my life. And then I was on a phone call with my best friend, and she was like, Suzie, maybe you need to start taking chances and make something of it. So it's kind of both. Like, have patience in God and his timing and what's going to work, but also say yes to the chances that you don't honestly want to. Say yes to things that are going to make you feel uncomfortable.
Is that why you said yes to being on the podcast?
That's just no.
Part of it?
Part of it. But a big, 2023, my New Year's resolution was just to live life. I didn't care what I was doing. I just wanted to be happy. I'm not going to focus on the past. I'm just going to do whatever makes me happy. And I really did that. I went skiing for the first time with some friends, fell in love with that. I did some biking with some friends. I went out to California, met incredible people with wheelchairs and their own disabilities. I rode on the train for the first time, being in a wheelchair. I did Kyle's podcast. I'm on this podcast. Just say yes to
you
things.
Went fishing?
That was a long time ago.
Oh, was it? I was just saying, I saw your post when you took a break from social media, at least on your post, and there was all these travels and cool experiences and things like that. Do you think that, and obviously today's the first time I'm meeting you in person, but I love that. It's interesting, and I relate to it a lot because I'm kind of on I'm having a similar, goal year of I'm just going to do stuff. I want to live a rich life and experience things and learn new things and, go all in on this roller coaster of life. Do you feel like you had that mentality before the accident and it got back after you kind of got to a healthy place? Or is this a new sort of mindset for you of saying yes to things?
I was in a hospital room, and I was like, I'm going to live my life. I told every nurse, every doctor, everyone, I was not going to let what happened to me slow me down. And it did. It slowed me down for a good year and a half. And then that switch changed, and I decided I was going to live. And so just saying yes to experiences and doing things that make me happy. But I did tell myself that when I first got hurt. And so I owe it to that girl who was laying in a hospital bed saying all this, I owe it to her to live my life to the
Yeah.
fullest.
I love that. So I'm curious because I wrestle with, it's a chicken or egg dilemma, which came first, right? Happy people do things, and doing things makes you happy. Do you think that, and speculative, obviously, but if somebody's in a dark place, that you can almost like force yourself out of it by saying yes to these things? Or does the yes come after the happiness and the decision to live a certain way? What was the order?
It's kind of, I would say that saying yes kind of developed me into being a more positive and happy person.
Even when you didn't want to?
Even when I didn't want to. Like saying yes to the Tamara Hall show, that was really nerve-wracking. I'm happy I did it. Getting hired as the JV volleyball coach, I'm happy I did it. I'm still doing it. Saying yes to you and Kyle, you're never going to regret the chances that you take. You're only going to regret the chances you don't take. So say yes, because it might suck. Cool, you don't have to do it again. It might be the best thing in the world and incredibly life-changing, and then you kind of figure out what you want to do.
Do you feel like you've got because first of all, I love that. Like, you talk about people's, deathbed regrets or whatever. Nobody ever regrets not doing things.
Yeah.
Nobody ever regrets doing things. They regret not doing things, like taking the chance or taking the risk or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, do you feel like you kind of got I've got nothing to lose mentality, like, cause sometimes I just think that there's sometimes different catalyst moments for people that kind of force them out of their comfort zone and force them into living a life that we're all meant to live. That's fulfilling and rich and full of experiences and things like that. I'm just kind of curious if yours came from a place of stubbornness or anger or, I got nothing to lose or screw it. What was kind of what helped you sort of start down this path of,
Probably
saying
all of those.
Yeah.
I am a really stubborn person. The anger, I was done dealing with it. And honestly, I already fell down a mountain. It can't be worse than that. Like, it can't be worse than what's already happened. So might as well try it.
Almost this like, try me. I
Yep.
got this, which is, there's almost like a swagger to that, to that mindset of, like you said, it can't be worse than.
It's kind of just like, all right, you said I am stubborn. And so part of that is when people tell me I can't do something, man, I'm good at proving people wrong. Let me
Watch
tell
me.
Yeah. I'm like, cool, watch me. And then I prove everyone wrong. And I'm like, I don't know.
Love it. I love it. What do you think has been like? What are you most proud of now?
I think I'm proud of just who I'm becoming and that person that has really changed. So yes, the injury sucked, but I'm really proud of battling through the depression, battling through the suicide thoughts. I'm really proud of, I had some people like leave my life, like my ex that broke up with me. I'm really proud that relationship kind of ended. I'm really proud at people who've just left my life since the accident because it all hurt, right? Those were all really hard times that I had to face. But I'm proud that I did it and I didn't get consumed with the negative energy and the negative thoughts and feelings because I wouldn't be here today and be able to say, I am really I'm proud of where I've come. I'm proud of my mental state. I'm proud that I chose to fight through all of that and just live this really fulfilling life.
Couple interesting things there. One is that I think it's really interesting that you said I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Like knowing that we're still on a journey You know, like we're not done evolving, we're not done changing. But you also, it's almost like there's this confidence about where we're headed. You know,
Yeah.
that I'm proud of obviously who you are, but who you're becoming as well, which I think was an interesting way to word that. And then you also mentioned the the hardness of it and the challenges and things like that. I'm curious, when you look back now on the accident and the impact that it's made in your life, we talked about those first 18 months, primary emotion being anger. What's the primary emotion today as it relates specifically to the accident and the impact that it's made on your life?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I would probably say grateful.
Wow.
I mean, I would have never 5 years ago, graduating college, if you told me I was going to live in a wheelchair, I probably would have been like, no, you're dumb. But I also wouldn't go back and change anything that happened that day. I mean, I have a really great life now, and I'm still going to go and do incredible things. And if anything, the doors for me just opened. I have more opportunities now than I ever did as an able-bodied person.
I cannot believe that's the coolest answer. Not at all. You're gonna have to give me a minute to think of my next question now, because I expected somewhat of a positive reaction, but not that gratitude would be your primary emotion. You know, looking back on the event, and I think that that is so powerful. That it's kind of opened up these opportunities, and in a lot of ways, it almost feels like you've got this perception that it was transformative. So I think that's just the coolest answer I've ever heard ever, that you're grateful. There's kind of this idea too of a lot of times, sometimes people, I had Doug Miller on the show, and we were talking about getting out of our comfort zone, and we were discussing the fact that sometimes situations aren't necessarily bad enough to force people out of their comfort zones. Like the job's not that bad, the relationship's not that bad. Like, you know, we end up kind of just like sticking it out because it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And with hindsight, you know, looking back, sometimes event that makes things worse catapults us forward. It's like a slingshot theory. You know, it pulls us back and then launches us forward. Which seems like that's exactly what has happened with you in gratitude. I'm curious too, how has it changed your perspective on others? Like, because I think, and one of the things that I think is unique about your story is that everybody has some level of a challenge, right? Like everybody has some level of thing that we're dealing with, thing that we're going through. Most of the time it's hidden. Most of the time it's something that, you know, we deal with in the background, or that we sort of have another hour to push through, or whatever it might be. Yours is very visual. Like it, you know, your struggle is clear. It's apparent. You know, we and obviously there's, you know, the mental component of it. I don't mean to downplay that, but I'm just kind of curious, like, has it changed how you view other people or the world or anything like that? Like, has it kind of changed your life perspective in any way?
Yeah. I would say that my big perception would be I follow a lot of really cool disabled athletes and just like disabled people on social media. And man, there's incredible people. I mean, people that do incredible things and can lift incredible weights. And people with disabilities are insane humans. And there's just, it's so inspiring. It's kind of a hard word to use because they're just living their life. So we shouldn't like view them as like, oh, you're so inspiring. But to me, they are. I mean, I followed them because I wanted my life to change. And for me, they were my role models, the people I looked up to. I wanted to be like them. And so that kind of changed. People around here, I think a lot of people just take the accessibility for granted, and I see it a lot just in this area and in other places. But I live here. So that's kind of hard. I mean, when I see like a family of 4 park in an accessible spot and just walk in, I want to key their car. I don't, but I want to. So I think people like me, I look up to, I use them as my role models, or people just with disabilities in general, I look up to them. And then the able-bodied people, I think they need to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are super open-minded, some people are really closed-minded, and that's just kind of what I realized since getting hurt. So the people that are open-minded and want to know more and want to have the conversation, those are great people. And I'm so happy that people want to know more about what is hard about my life or the challenges that I face. That's great because you're acknowledging that it's not easy. To when you turn a blind eye and you just don't acknowledge it at all, you just kind of live in your little sheltered bubble, in my opinion.
Yeah, which is interesting because a few thoughts on that, but because I try to help me remember to go back to choosing to follow the disabled inspirational content. But I think it's interesting and it's interesting thing to consider, and I would actually appreciate your advice even on it, because I'm a very inquisitive person. I've always been very curious. I've also been very loving. Like I've never been the type of guy that, is prejudiced or looks at people different, but I've always been curious about things. And I think that there's a fine line kind of between like acknowledging that you have a unique challenge that you are forced to deal with every day versus though also just treating you normal.
Yep.
Like give me the guidance on that. Like, cause I'm sure people stare sometimes. I'm sure there's like, kids that ask inappropriate questions or whatever, but I'm just kind of curious of, what's the balance look like or even just from your perspective, what's like, how do you like it when people interact with you on you're just a normal person too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't really like being told I'm inspirational for going grocery shopping or going shopping or working, because that's just me living my life. So I think...
What if it is inspirational though?
I don't know. You can say it.
I'm just saying, because it's even, I saw you in the parking lot and I asked if you needed help, and I felt like such an idiot after. I'm like, of course she doesn't need help, but it's like
everyone asks, it's okay.
Yeah, it's just coming from a place of like, do you need help? Anyway, I just think it's because it's also interesting. You talked about the people that you follow, and you were reluctant to use the word inspirational there as well.
It's a big conversation.
The topic of inspiration?
About calling people with disabilities, inspirational.
Tell me more about that.
Because we really are just living our normal life. And so there is just that fine line. Me going grocery shopping, that's not really inspirational. I'm literally just trying to get food home so I can eat, right? Being one of the first wheelchair coaches in this area, you can say that's inspirational because there always has to be a first. And it is hard to judge, and some people will tell you, no, it's not that inspirational. But it is a big conversation that even I had to learn, newly injured. I didn't realize that it was offensive. I mean, I went into Walmart and I was like, okay, whatever. I just want to get my grocery shopping done. And so I didn't really know it was a big problem to some people, but it is. And so the people I follow, that's why they're more my role models. They are incredible people. I mean, I follow an Olympic basketball player, an Olympic wall climbing guy, personal trainers in wheelchairs that I got to meet, incredible people. And really, it's just, we're living our life. It just looks a little different. And that's why, honestly, our society we need to change as a whole and accept that people live life differently. And just because we look different doing it doesn't mean we're inspirational, I guess is how I view that.
Do you think that there's a chance, though, that it is inspirational in the sense that there's a knowing that there was some severe adversity that occurred and you're still grocery shopping? Like whether or not you're in a wheelchair is irrelevant, really. It's more inspirational that clearly something tragic happened and you're still showing up.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think a lot of people feel a sense of saying people with disabilities are inspirational. So I think it's just a balance. And it really is going to depend on who you come in contact with.
Yeah.
I'm okay if people say I'm inspirational. You know, I get it. Because 3-4 years ago, I was saying it too. So I get it. Some other people might take offense to it. You're just going to have to play it by whoever you talk to.
Yeah. Do you want to be inspirational? Like, do you feel like that contributes to some of the why? Or do you feel like there's a different why?
I want to show people that you can overcome what hand you've been dealt. So yeah, a little inspirational. But really, I want people to be able to look at my life experiences and say, okay, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And just, that's how I view my life. So if that's what inspiration is, cool, you can call me inspirational. I really just want people to know that life is really, really hard at times. And I use the word hard because every day there's something good, right? So you can't really have a bad day because something good did happen, whatever it may be. So you're going to come into some really hard times, hard days, hard seasons, and you're going to have to choose. You're going to have to choose to fight that next day or that next hour. And I want people to be able to look at me and reach out to me and just say, hey, how'd you do it? Or have the conversation or say, oh, Suzie did it. I can do it too. You know, be that person like, all right, challenge me. I'm going to do it.
Which sounds pretty inspirational. Because I think that it's interesting to hear. So there's a lot of inspirational people. I'm going to use the word.
Okay.
That also say I'm just a normal person. Like I'm just I just happen to work harder or have other traumas or I've been in an accident or whatever it might be. And I think, and just humor me for a minute, I almost think that is why it's inspirational. That, and you even said it too, that I did this, I've been through this, you can you can do it too. Like you're strong also.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of what makes these stories inspirational is the underlying tone that it is just normal people. And like that we all have more strength and resiliency in us than we realize. And people like you and people, that I would put into that category of inspirational, maybe motivational is who knows, but
yeah, I guess motivational is probably better.
That is, it resonates because of the normalcy You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you were born with, this incredible things about you that, let you stand out in a different way, I think it would be a little bit less remarkable than the fact that you're just a normal person, but just with an incredible amount of resiliency and stubbornness and optimism too. So anyway, I just think it's a perspective worth considering of the fact that, that I just, you mentioning that you're just normal or whatever, just going grocery shopping. I think that's actually what is remarkable, that you're normal and continue to keep showing up and things like that. So I'm curious though, because I'm picking up some underlying thoughts from our conversation of these moments that you've made intentional decisions. And we talked about, the turning point, and you even right then when you were talking about life being hard, you said, and I say that on purpose because there's good in every day. Like throughout our conversation, you've had these nuggets of optimistic perspective. And you also talk about following, the disability community and choosing which content you consume and things like that. Do you feel like you've sort of stumbled into that perspective, or did you make, for example, like intentionally choosing who you're going to follow on social media? Did that happen by happenstance and then you chose to do more of it, or were you like seeking something to pull you out?
No, so I deliberately went and tried to find anyone and everyone in a wheelchair because because being paralyzed was hard enough, right? Learning how to relive my entire life, that was hard enough. But seeing pictures of people that I grew up with or knew or any able-bodied person was miserable for me. I hated it. And it just reminded me of everything that I couldn't do or everything that I thought I couldn't do. So, yeah, I suck out people who looked like me in wheelchairs. And as I found people like that, then other people popped up and more people popped up. And so the person that I originally started following changed into a few more. And then that kind of just took off from there. And the friends I met at Craig, their circles that they run with, then became people that I followed. So the disability world and community is actually pretty small. And so finding people, it was kind of hard, but then once you find someone, then it just opens.
Yeah.
And so I definitely sought it out just as a way of like, this is my new normal. They did it. I can do it. That's where that came from.
Well, and I think that's cool. And it's important to note the intentionality behind seeking out, who to follow. I think I've said it several times that we shouldn't use social media less. We should use it more intentionally.
Yes.
And, and even algorithmically it started to, encourage like who you're going to follow and things like that. And I think that we have a risky world that we're living in now with everything at our fingertips that we can go down a bad path. Like we can start to consume content that is awful or divisive or negative or, whatever it might be. And the concerning part about that for me is that then you get more of it, to your point. Whereas if we purposefully look for, whether it's motivational content or it's funny, like right now I've kind of been on this kick of optimized life, I guess, for lack of a better term, I'll call it. Like I'm learning all about different foods to eat and, different, whatever. And similarly, I start to see a whole lot more content like that. And, you can kind of learn it. But I think that's an important lesson that you purposefully chose. And it seems like you even, because you realized consciously that the content you were consuming, which was able-bodied people doing their thing, but that it was making you feel negative. It was kind of having that negative impact. And I think it's powerful that you had a strong enough mindset to say, this is impacting me in a negative way. I'm going to seek out other content that can impact me in a positive way, or at least that I can, relate with on a more real level. That's a powerful thing, because that can apply way beyond, looking for a disability community. I think that, across the board, people should be very aware of the content we're consuming, the emotions it's evoking from us. Like I've started going down a path of, watching even more of like the news stories, and I'm like, oh, that's just,
it's draining.
Yeah, just bumming me out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to purposefully not now because, we have a life to live, and, experiences to enjoy and things like that. So I think that's, I think it's powerful that you did that. I'm curious, you mentioned kind of the community, and feeling like you're a part of it. How have, and you also talked about, your ex-boyfriend. How have relationships changed? Like, do you feel like you have more meaningful relationships and closer bonds with people, or that you relate with people in different ways? What's been the evolution of your personal relationships?
So I definitely had people, I've had not just my ex leave, but like I've had friends leave my life. And then my ex left. But I would say that I'm a lot more diligent about who I spend time with. And I have a handful of friends, and I'm close with those friends. But I also know that those friends, if I were to end up in jail, I can call them. They're going to come bail me out, right? Like, I have a group of friends and a support system that's small, but that's all I need.
Small but mighty.
Yeah. And the way I look at it, the people that left my life, they served their purpose. They came into my life, they taught me something, they served their purpose. Now they're not part of my life. I hope they're all doing well. I know I'm doing well. So I think you have to look at it like that when it comes to who you let in your circle, and think about what your feelings are associated with those people, and how much work are you putting into those relationships? How much of it is all on you? And for one, like my friendships, that was me. Like I was like, I can't do this. So I let them go, and it was that. My ex, he chose to leave, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I think, and there's a saying like, God removes people in your life. Like it's not like the devil trying to like cause you harm. Like he's doing it intentionally because you're outgrowing them. And I think that's kind of what happened with me and him. We just kind of outgrew each other, and I hope he's doing well. Like I said, I know I am, but being intentional with the people that you surround yourself with. What is their mindset? What are they supporting you? Are you constantly the only one that reaches out? Is it mutual? What kind of feelings do you get when you're around them? Like, are you walking on eggshells around them? Are you happy around them? Can you just say whatever you want? That is what you should look for when you think about your circle or who you want in your life. Think about how they personally make you feel, and are they making you a better person? If they're not making you a better person and they are holding you back, or you're walking on eggshells, if something doesn't feel right, just go. Like, our bodies are so in tune with other people and situations and feelings. Listen, if something's telling you it's not right, and I didn't, my body told me for a good year, this isn't right, this isn't what you want in a relationship. I didn't listen. It worked out in my favor, but be intentional with who you surround yourself with, and think about, all right, are they a positive impact in my life? Are they encouraging me to take chance after chance after chance? My buddy, who is one of my good friends too, out in California, he came out here for Colorado, And I kid you not, I had to use a slide board to get into my car. And he was like, you're just being a child. You are too scared to do a popover transfer because you're scared. Just get over the fear. And so we challenge each other on that. Like, we push each other to do better in our life and challenge each other. And that's what you want. Like, good, positive relationships that push you to be better.
Yeah. I needed to hear that today.
Good.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, there's probably the most limited resource we have is our time and our energy.
Yeah.
And being intentional about where we give it and to whom we give it, I think is super, super important. And I love that perspective of trusting our guts. And, if something doesn't feel right, it's not. And the fact that God can,
he has his hand in it.
Yeah, which is I needed that today. So thank you. I'm curious. Everybody has hopes and dreams. Everybody has, the plan for our life and where we're headed. Have those hopes and dreams changed for you? What your hopes and dreams pre-accident versus post-accident? And if so, in what way? Or have they not changed? Or do you still have the same hopes and dreams that you've always had?
I think my hopes and dreams when I first got injured were I want to live as normal as possible. I want to be fully independent. I want to get back to coaching volleyball. Those were my hopes and dreams. That's what I wanted. And I got all of those. I live independently. I'm back coaching volleyball. So my dreams are just goals, I guess. And so my next, I wanted to go into counseling. I knew I wanted to go into counseling towards the end of my stay at Craig. And so I got into a master's program, and I chose to do that. So I think my dreams just were goals, and I'm a very goal-driven person. And so when I want something, I'm going to get it. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get what I want. And I mean that in the sense that I don't care how long it takes. I will work for it. If it's really what I want, that's what I want. So, and that, I've always been like that. That was not like a post-accident. I've always been that stubborn of a person. So they've changed, but they're not new dreams, or kind of just new goals. So.
Was the thought of being a counselor even on the radar before your accident, or that's
No.
That's new?
No, I was actually working at TBK Bank and loving life. Thought that's where I would stay forever. And then I got hurt, and then everyone kind of does the same thing. You're really inspirational. You can reach a lot of people. And I really I wanted kids in particular. I wanted kids to know that life gets really, really hard. It's going to suck, but you can get through it. And I really don't want people or kids to be limited to what their past is, to what their circumstances are. I want them to know it's going to take work. Everything does. But you can get it. If you really, really want something, you can get it. And so that's kind of why I became a counselor. And I'll be happy when I'm done with school. I'll be 100% honest. I'm ready to be done. But it is cool. I am one of the only wheelchair users in my program right now. So when I had to go over for my labs for like a week, I got to tell all my instructors and other people what it's like being in a wheelchair, what I have to look at, what I had to ask them, like, is your elevator working? Okay, well, it's not. Where are we going to go? How are we going to change and adapt? So I think dreams are just goals that you have to put in the work to get.
Yeah, whether you're in a wheelchair or not.
Yeah, if you want something, you can get it. It's going to be a lot of work, and are you okay putting in the work?
It seems like you found your why.
I don't know about that. there's some secrets that I'm kind of like holding back. I'm patiently waiting. I'm going to see how things plan out. But I got some moves. I have moves that are upcoming goals that I'm hoping to achieve.
And I won't pry on that as bad as I want to, but the result of those, is it plans to make a bigger impact? Is it plans to have a bigger audience? I won't pry on what the plans are, but I would be curious to hear what the outcome of those will be, just from make a ton of money, impact a bunch of lives. What's kind of
those are just, I always want to impact people, but so my big saying was, even if I just impact one person, that's enough for me. I don't need to go and like try and impact 1,000 people. Like, doing these are great and I love doing them. And I think it's awesome that people want to hear my story and think of me as inspirational. That's awesome. But that's never what I sought out to do. I was perfectly okay with the fact that if I inspire one person out of this whole accident, that's enough for me. That's enough to make it worth it. And so I think one of my big dreams, I just want to travel more. I want to see the world. And so that's kind of a big thing that I'm going to be chasing in the upcoming years. I just want to see more of the U.S., but I also want to go internationally and go see some other places. So that's a big thing that I'm hoping to do. And then, I don't know, if inspiration and more of these come up, like, awesome. I love doing them. I love talking to people because I don't know, I learn as much as everyone else. You talk to enough people and you learn and you grow and you learn and you grow. That's life. And so, but it's not, nothing for me was ever about, okay, I want to impact more people.
Right.
That just kind of happened.
Which I think it's great. Suzie, thank you so much for sharing your story. I have a gift for you that is going to be incredibly ironic now. So these are, I'll just explain it, but I'll tell you why too, because we've gone down the whole path of inspiration, right? These are Inspire by Example shirts, which, the plan of that would have been, but I give these
those are sweet.
I give these to every guest, but I'll add to it that you don't inspire me because you go grocery shopping.
Thanks.
You inspire me because of your resiliency, your authenticity, your vulnerability to share your story, and the rawness that you bring to it too. And I think it's important that you know that whether you like it or not, you are inspiring. And it's probably for reasons different than you think of every day, but you are making an impact. And you've impacted many of us, and it's a powerful thing. And I think that the way that you've taken this incredible adversity, survived 1 hour at a time through, till the days got brighter and till things got better, is truly inspirational. And I'm going to shamelessly use the word, if you're okay with it, because I think that it's special, and I think that it's courageous for you to share your story the way that you do, and to make the impact that you're making. So you inspire me, whether that's good or bad. But also just really appreciate you being here and for sharing the story. So thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
It was fun.